All right, so if you're an OpenAI user, you might have seen a pretty serious-looking email pop into your inbox recently, a security notice. So you're probably asking, what happened? Does this affect me? And what should I do? Well, we're gonna break all of that down for you nice and simple.
Yeah, getting an email like that can definitely make your heart skip a beat, right? Don't worry, our whole goal here is just to give you a really clear, calm look at the facts, what actually happened based on what the companies involved have told us.
Okay, let's get right to the most important thing you need to know right up front. This was not a breach of OpenAI's main systems. I'll say it again, your ChatGPT chats, your passwords, your API keys, all of that stuff was safe and sound inside OpenAI's own servers. The problem, it turns out, happens somewhere else entirely.
So, if it wasn't OpenAI that was breached, where did this whole thing start? Well, that brings us to what's known as a vendor security incident.
The company at the heart of this is called Mixpanel. Now, OpenAI and honestly tons of other tech companies use services like Mixpanel for analytics. It's basically a tool that helps them see how people are using their stuff, in this case their API platform, so they can improve it. But the key thing to remember here is that they are a third party, an outside company. And this is where it gets really interesting. How the bad guys got in. This wasn't some super complex, Mission Impossible style hack on OpenAI servers. Nope, it was actually something called smishing. Think of it like phishing, but over a text message. An attacker sent a fake text, tricked a Mixpanel employee, and boom, they were in. All it took was one clever text message.
All right, so we've established the breach happened at Mixpanel. Now for the million-dollar question. Who is actually affected by this?
And this is a super important distinction to make. This incident only impacted users of the API platform. We're talking about the developers, the companies, the people who are actually building things with OpenAI's technology. So if you're someone who just pops on the main ChatGPT website to write an email or ask a question, you can breathe easy. You were not affected. So for those API users who were affected, what exactly got out? Let's get really specific about the data that was exposed. So the good news is the exposed info was limited to what's called metadata. Think of it like the label on a package, not the contents inside. We're talking things like the name on your API account, your email address, a rough idea of your location, like your city and state, and some techie details like what browser you use. It's all information about your account, not the stuff you actually created with your account.
But honestly, what's even more important is what was not exposed. And this comes straight from OpenAI. No chat history, no API requests, no API keys, which are super important, no credit card details, no passwords. Absolutely none of the really sensitive, critical stuff was touched. That context is everything for understanding that this was, thankfully, a pretty limited breach. Okay, so a breach happens. That's the bad part. But what happens next, how a company responds, is just as crucial. So let's take a look at OpenAI's swift response. And the timeline here really tells a story of a pretty quick reaction. You can see Mixpanel spots the problem on November 8th. The very next day, they're on the phone to OpenAI. A couple of weeks later, OpenAI gets the list of who is affected, and within just a day or two, they start sending out those notification emails. That kind of speed and transparency is exactly what you want to see in a situation like this.
And OpenAI didn't stop at just sending emails. They took some really decisive steps. First, they cut ties with Mixpanel. Done. And maybe even more importantly, they launched a bigger security review of their entire vendor ecosystem. That shows they're not just plugging one hole, they're checking the foundation of the whole house to make it stronger.
So that brings us to the big question. What should you do now to protect your account? Because even though passwords weren't leaked, bad actors could still use that exposed info, like your name and email, to try and trick you with phishing scams. So here are 3 simple but super effective things you can do. Number 1, just be extra cautious with emails. If something looks a little off, it probably is. Attackers are clever. They'll use your name to make scams look real. Number 2, always double check the sender's email address. And number 3, if you haven't done it yet, please go enable multi-factor authentication, or MFA. It is single-handedly one of the best things you can do to protect pretty much any account you have online. You know, this whole incident really shines a spotlight on a much bigger issue. One that affects basically every single one of us online, and that's the reality of vendor risk. It's a really good question, right? How does this even happen where a company like OpenAI is so focused on security? Well, it's because a company can build its own digital fortress with giant walls and a moat, but its security is only as strong as the weakest bridge leading into it.
And that's the core idea behind third-party vendor risk.
It means a company's safety isn't just about what they do in-house. It's tied to every single partner they work with. The company that processes their payments, the one that hosts their data, or in this case, the one that handles their analytics.
And that's really the bottom line here. In our super connected world, security is a team sport. A problem that one company can ripple outwards and affect all of its partners and customers. It's a digital supply chain.
Which leaves us with a really big, thought-provoking question for the future. You see, this incident wasn't a failure of the AI technology. It was a failure in the ecosystem around the AI. So as AI gets woven into more and more of the tools we use every day, how do we make sure that the entire chain, every partner, every piece of software is secure? Because figuring that out might just be one of the biggest challenges ahead of us.